Hey everyone, welcome to another codeLive episode. My name is Mohith. I'm a developer advocate here at Salesforce. And today in this codeLive session, we're gonna learn how to write secure Apex using a new feature called user mode data operations. Now, we have chats open, so please make use of it. Ask me any questions, while we do this codeLive episode, and I'm so excited to be sort of back doing some fun coding today. So today, I'll go through some slides just so that everyone gets it on the same page. I just want to show some of the new features and new methods that we have added, and then we will get into actual coding. So I have lots of Apex classes with me that's written in the previous style. They don't use this new feature called user mode data operation. So I'm gonna get into those Apex classes, try to modify the code, show you how you can easily use this user mode data operations and get the same security as your administrators has configured for your Salesforce org. So we have a lot of coding to do today. A lot of information to share. So I'm really excited. So how about we get to the presentation? And I promise this is gonna be like 4 or 5 slides. We'll quickly sort of go through and make sure that we are all on the same page. I know some of you are very experienced, you might immediately get it, but there are also beginners here who want to try to understand this feature in more detail. So we'll go over the slides. Let me actually share my screen so that we can start looking at my slides here. So let me share my screen. There we go. There we have the slides. All right. So let's actually okay. Hopefully you can all hear me now. Let me go check it out. My audio settings once, just to make sure everything is audible. Okay, looks like I'm audible now. Um, can anybody kind of give me thumbs up? Okay, all right. And you guys can also see my screens. Yes, so you are now able to see my screen. All good, all good. Thank you so much for somebody calling it out that my voice was not clear there. All right, so this was the first thing that I wanted to talk through is like there is this new keyword called as user as system. If you want to execute any DML in system mode, you can say the DML operation name like insert in this case, and then add as user. If you want to run in user mode, if you want to run in system mode, you can say as system. So the next thing that I want to talk about is, sometimes you need this configuration of setting off the access level a bit dynamic. So for example, sometimes you want to run this insert operation in system mode. Sometimes you want to run this in user mode. For example, let's say I'm running this via a trigger, right? I definitely want to run this method in system mode, but let's say I'm using an LWC and I've written a UI and I want to respect the user permission. In that case, I want to maybe run this DML operation in user mode. So in that case, there is this thing called access level. So all of the database methods that we have, like database.insert or update or delete or undelete for database operations, now we have added this access level. So again, I'll take some example code here. We'll code live and I'll show you. So this is what I want to show. Like, you can just use the access level configuration in my previous method and you can configure it. We'll take some code examples, as I said. The other thing that I wanted to mention is now the SOCL statements are also getting this new user mode data operations. Like, for example, you can make sure that your SOCL query is running in system mode or in user mode. So we have with user mode or with system mode. So in with user mode, what happens is, let's say in this example, right, if there is a field level security that's been configured for shipping street and shipping city, and the user is not supposed to actually see them, then you will see that this query will actually throw a security exception, because it is respecting the user mode. Now, if you don't want that exception and you still want to run this whole query in system mode, maybe because you're running inside a trigger or a batch class, in that case, you can say with system mode, right? Same applies to aggregate SOCL, your where classes, your SOCL also. Like, for example, if you have SOSL, which is our object search language, right? Um, Salesforce object search language, in which you are searching across multiple objects and looking into multiple fields, then also you can just use the user mode operation. And then basically from there, you should be able to sort of configure the user mode operations. Now, there is also one more thing that I want to check. Is there any, sort of questions that you want me to clarify? Let me know. Um, if there are any questions here. Let's see in the chat if there are any questions here. Okay, no questions so far. So all good, all good. Thank you. Let's move on to the next slide. So this slide, I put it together so that I clarify a few things here. So one of the considerations is, user mode sort of overrides sharing keyword behavior. So that means, uh, any user mode operations, right? Like, for example, if you make your classes without sharing, then by default, the sharing rules that are configured uh, by your org administrators, right, they get sort of not being followed, right? So you can still, like, query and access information even you are not supposed to. That's what without sharing does. But I want to remind that the user mode operation by default overrides that behavior, and it considers both sharing as well as field level security and the object permissions. So remember always that the user mode overrides without sharing. So for this specific method, it overrides for that specific operation only. Like, if you have a whole method, it will still run in system context, right, without sharing. But this specific method, because you have put it as a user mode, kind of overrides that operation and makes sure that this operation is still respecting the user permissions. So there are some interesting questions here. Let me actually get myself on the camera here and take these some of these questions before I kind of move on to the coding task that we have up today. So one of the questions that actually came up was, can we use this method in security review? Now, this is a very important question, and there was also a related question on this: is, are these features like GA or beta? So here's the thing. So this is available in GA. That means it is generally available, well supported. If you find any issues, let us know. You can raise bugs with our support team. So yes, this feature is GA, and yes, the answer is yes. You can use this for security review. So if you are building app exchange applications for your customers, and you want to enforce all these security features, you don't have to, like, rely on our previous way of doing it, which was a bit tedious. We all agree, and this feature is supposed to, like, make this task really easy. It will enforce security, it will keep everything, but then this API is very simplified. So security with simplicity, let's put it this way. And yeah, I hope that answers the question. There is also one more question that I want to show up here on the screen. So this is again from Tech Lead. So the question is, does it apply to the polymorphic SOCL? Yes. So the answer for that is yes. It applies to the polymorphic socle. So if you have a polymorphic socle, all the security rules are um, there. Now, I want to take one more question here before we actually get into the coding exercise. And this question is, how do we not throw an exception? That's a very good question. Like, how do we make sure that we don't throw the exception? So for that, I'm gonna go back to my slides and show you the slides here again. Let me bring back the slides here. Let me maximize the slide. So here I wanted to show you a slide, and this slide is around using uh, strip inaccessible. So in case you want to sort of still have executed this without sort of like getting an exception, then we recommend that you use this thing called strip inaccessible. And yeah, and this is how you can use this method to sort of avoid being an exception. All right, so I think we have sort of covered everything in this slide. I will come back again to this slide, but let's actually me stop sharing my screen, right? And then we can I start sharing the VS Code screen, so we can all start sort of working with this new method. This is code live, right? I like to code, so we will actually work with code here. So let's share our screen. Share. uh, all right, let's share your screen. Okay, now you can see me as well as the screen. So let me bring up my VS Code. So what I have today is classes from Apex Recipes. Apex Recipes is our sample app. You can actually Google for Apex Recipes in Google, and it'll show you the Apex recipes that we have. We have sort of modified the Apex recipes to now use all of the user mode data operations. But for this assignment specifically, I wanted to show how I did it. So I kind of reverted the code in my local org and in my local machine. I've set up a project where it's still using some of the previous way of doing things. And we will actually, as a part of this code live episode, what I want to do is actually take a look at each of them and see how we can sort of use some of these new APIs so we get used to it. There is also one more question that is coming up. Will the user mode only work for version 57 plus? Well, the answer is actually no. So the user mode should be operational, without any API version consideration. But there is a little thing or a little consideration that you have to take in terms of how the exception is handled. It is documented in summer 23 release notes. Basically, previously we were throwing exception of security exception even before, like, if there is a DML exception, we still used to show that as a security exception. We've rectified that bug, and so we recommend that you always use the latest one, because that bug is solved only when you use the latest API. So I highly recommend to use the latest v58 API. Actually, there's no harm in upgrading your Apex, your Apex versions. Of course, you'll have to test and make sure your test classes are fine, and you have to test your functionality. But we recommend latest because they have great performance improvements, and also some of these bugs have been resolved in the upcoming summer release. All right. So let's see. So today I have this simple socle recipes code, and this has some methods. They're using with security enforced here. Actually, we don't need to use with security enforced anymore, right? I was showing you how we can sort of use these new methods, right, for socle. So let's actually try using one of these with user mode here. So all that I have to do here is just a very simple thing, just replace this with user mode. That's it. So wherever I have with security mode, I'm gonna just say with user mode, and that's pretty much my first task for today. Is like, wherever we have this security enforced, uh, you know we can just blindly say, okay, we want to use user mode. Now, The problem with the with security enforced is again it did not consider all of the use cases, right? And I highly recommend that there is an episode actually on Salesforce Plus from TDX that was done by PM for this, Daniel Ballinger and Chris Peterson. They talk about why they kind of don't advise anymore to use with security enforced, because with the mechanism of how with security enforced worked is totally sort of outdated, because there are new ways to secure your applications in Salesforce. There are always new features that are getting added. For example, there is a feature that got added called um, I think the feature was called uh, restriction rules, scoping rules, and things like that. So there are now more ways to share your records than you were used to, and this with security sort of did not consider those new features. So they sort of moved us to using this with user mode, so that any new feature in the platform that gets built, these keywords automatically sort of enforce, right? So they kind of explain the reason behind that. So again, our first task is pretty simple at this point. I can even search for with security and just replace, right? I mean, I did it one by one, but I don't recommend doing one by one. Just search for it wherever you have with security enforced. You can easily just replace it. Let's try to save this actually. Let's deploy this to see if it goes fine. It should actually. Now, one of the things that you would see here is um, sometimes your PMD might not recognize this new keyword. I think there is a PMD ticket already. PMD is an open source, by the way, open source tool to do your security vulnerability testing, or it's basically a tool that identifies any security issues in your code. So, the PMD open source team is actually working on making sure that this thing gets incorporated there. So, ignore that warning for the time being at this point, but soon you will see that those warnings will go away, and with user mode should be fine. Okay. All right. So that was our first thing. And as you can see, we just deployed it and it got deployed. So the API version that I'm using is 57. Um, Ideally, you can use 58. Actually, that's the latest. Actually, if your org is moved to summer, that's what I recommend actually, to use that. Okay, so that was our first thing. Pretty straightforward, right? Because we are using with security. But now sometimes, right, you might have also used some other ways. How many of you like use schema describes and use like global get describe, get an object, and from there you look into the field, every field, and see if they have those security permissions or not. Many of us, right? So even that thing can be simplified, right? Um, all right. So let's move on to the another class called dynamic sockle recipes. Again, this class is again in the dynamic sockle also, right? Yes. So somebody is saying they've used schema methods. Yes. So for all those schema methods, right? There is no need for using those schema methods. They make your code like little bulk. They make your code a little bulky, I would say, and this is more robust, right? um, I mean, this is native language feature now that we have. So let's take a look at this simple dynamic sockle query that I've written, right? And let's actually try to use with user mode here too. So here also, even if it is a dynamic sockle, right, you can use with user mode in this query. um, so that should be pretty simple to use. You can say with user mode and it should work fine, right? um, that's one way to use that, is just put it in the query and it should be fine. The other way is obviously is the other issue that I want to do, or other issue that I or sorry, the other way we could do this is by um, you know also using um, something called as, so this will have, so database dot query, right? So if you look at, if you search for this database dot query, let's see if, so database dot query, see, So you see database.query or query locator now has access level. You see there is this thing called access level. So there is a class called access level now. So basically what we could do, we could also say access level dot and then say whether you want to run this in system mode or user mode. So in this case I want to run in user mode. Now imagine if you had to like make this dynamic a bit, like that means you want to sort of have control over this method and you want this method to be reusable kind of thing. um, and is there a buffering issue? Let's see. I want to go back and check my stream here to see if there is any buffering issue. Okay, yeah. Yeah, so it seems like everything is working fine as far as I can see. So we should be all good. So yeah, so as you can see, I can say access level user mode, and then I can also, let's say I want to make this method like really reusable at this point. So what I could do here is I can pass the access level class itself. Like I can say, I think it's called. Maybe we can pass it like instead of simple dynamic sockle query, maybe I can say with access, and I could do this thing called maybe have a parameter called access level. So I can say access level as my parameter and say access level, right? um, yeah, so I can obviously do this, right? So I was already showing you an example of how to do that for DML, but even for sockle too you can do it. It's called system.accessLevel actually. So then you could easily do this access level dot. So for example I could say access level, right? I can just pass the access level here. um, Even better if you use the system keyword here, right? System.accessLevel. So that way I can now pass in the access level 2, and this access level can actually just be here. Now you have something with access. So I can easily pass in that when I'm calling this method I could say dynamic sockle recipes dot simple dynamic sockle query with access, and then in the access level I can say access level dot user mode or system mode. So that way this method is now being able to adapt right to both system mode and user mode, and kind of leaves up to the consumer of the application, or basically leaves up to the implementer like developer to choose what you want to do, right? The other thing, so even here, right? So let's see this one, right? So this one again, what we can do for this one. So this one is using a binding sockle example. Basically, it's showing how to use this name parameter as a binding syntax. And you see, we had to do this escape single quotes to prevent some sockle injection, right? What we could do here is basically we could use a new feature, right? There is a new thing called database dot query with binds actually that I wanted to show. Let me quickly show. One sec. All right, so let me show you a quick feature called database with bind operation, right? Let's see. So for database dot bind operation, the way it works is this is also something that recently got added actually. So what you can do is you have a new thing called database dot query with binds. That's query with binds is the new expression or new feature. So where you can actually pass a map of string of object actually. So we can use this to implement our next challenge. So with that, right, you don't need to have to do like escape single quotes or anything like that. So let's actually implement that in this code. So here is a simple binding example, right? What I can do here is I can say I can create a map. Let's create a map here, map of string comma object, and then let me call this as name bind, and then let's say a new map. This will be a map of string comma object, misspelling object here, and then what we can do is this can have the binding expression. So my key is the name, right? And my value is the name. So here, right, my key is the name, my value is the name. So now what will happen is I definitely want to get rid of this with security enforced now that we have learned about this new feature, right? So here I can have my query string and I can have my bind expression. And then I can say I don't even need to do this because the query with binds actually take care of it. So I'm interested in using now query with binds. So let's use that query with binds. So now what I can do is I can pass my query string here, right? And the bind map could be the name bind that I've created here, and then we could also pass in the access level. So now if I want to run this in user mode, I can say access level class, say access level class dot, and I can say user mode. And that's about it. Why is it throwing an error? Okay, that's because it's missing a thing here. Okay, let me see if there are any questions on our stream. That's a great suggestion. Somebody is saying, um, so the question that I am looking at it is, can we make this method that accepts map aura enabled? Okay, I'll get to that. But there is a question here that says, can you change the input variable name from name to input name? Yes, that's a great suggestion. Yes, we can definitely change that. That's a great suggestion. So that way it is less confusing. Okay, I agree with that. Let's do that right away. So that name can change to input name. And then we can change this back to input name. And we have the name bind expression. Yes. There you go. All right. So now what I can do is let's try to save this. So query with binds, right? It's a feature that I really like. So couple of things that it does. One is obviously I don't need to anymore have like escaping my input name here or escaping my input. The query with binds automatically takes care of making sure that my code is not having a sockle injection. And also yeah, that could also be like this could accept a map instead of a string. That would also do it. Yeah. Yeah. There is a question from Merrick. I believe that we are making a mistake here. Why do we mention the input name in the query string if we are using query with binds? So so let's understand a bit around how the query with bind work, right? Let me try to actually save this. Let's save this or deploy this basically. Variable does not exist, save query string. So let's see. Of course, it's just query string now. Try this. It's taking some time thinking through it. There you go. It got deployed. There you go. It says it got deployed. All right. Let's actually see what's the thing. Okay, it's just throwing an error, but actually it got deployed. Let's actually test this out from anonymous Apex here. So in my scripts, I'm gonna do some testing. So from VS Code, we can always test this. So I can say dynamic sockle recipes. Okay, our class is a static class, right? Okay, I'm gonna say this one dot. The one that we have is simple binding sockle query. All right, now let me find out. Uh, let's open the org actually. I want to find out an account with some name here. Pull that into my other windows so you can guys all see. Everyone can see here. Let's look at accounts. Do we have an account here? I'm gonna just create a simple account called test account. Save it. Saved. Just want to say it's doing an actual match. So let's do a test account. Execute. It did execute. So key input name does not exist in the bind map. You see, that's how we learn, by making mistakes. So really all that I had to do here was that the key input name does not exist in the bind map. Now that's the error that it is saying. So we can just put back the name here. See, we got a runtime exception, and yes, Merrick was right. Yes, Merrick was right here. So it's taking some time to deploy. So there you go. So now we have it. Let's actually execute this now. It did execute fine. Let me clear this so we can see the output. There you go. So it successfully executed. We can also take a look at the result for this. The result is list of account for this. So we can say list of accounts, and even debug that account. Debug. There it is. Yes, I'll see. There you go. All right, let me. All right, so yes, so pretty simple how you use query with binds. Really, all that you need to do is make sure you map. You create a map, and then you map your input to the expression that you want, or the key that you want to use in your sockle. You could have multiple of them. All that you need to do is put it into this map, and as long as it matches by key, it should work fine. Yes. All right, so let's move on. I hope this session is turning to be useful, and we are all learning a lot of things here, right? The next thing that I wanted to do was get back to that um, dynamic sockle thing. So how about we also, and this will be along the same lines actually. So what you will do here again, we have here we have resolve dynamic field. So here we are resolving from account dot name into a key called account name. So what we could again do is basically do a dynamic sort of a map. So for example, I could do so here they had to do some things, right, to resolve to a string, etc., etc. We could all skip that, and then we could say, we could have account name here. We can create a bind for it, and then we don't need this because again, um, I can use the could use the query with binds actually. Um, yeah. So now what we need to do is make sure that this is actually this is a key, and then we need the value for this, right? So the key name is account name, right? So where the name is equal to account name, so we need the account name here. So we could say string, then I could say account name equals, for the key here, account name, and then I could say this. Again, we don't need all of these, and instead of save string, we don't need to do any save string. We can just put the query string here. We can put the map here so that it can resolve when it looks at the account name. And then I can put the access level parameter. There you go. So now as you can see now that we have all of these, right? So where name equals account name. So this gets resolved by this. Let's check it out. What does it say here? Method does not exist. Line number 83. Okay. Okay, let's see. Yeah, because the database.query doesn't work, it has to be query with points. There you go. Fun. Fun. All right, let's look at the chat here. Let me see the chat. Yeah, there you go, Merrick. You're right. It has to be query with binds. Yes, that you're right, Merrick, that the value that we have here, it should map to the value, not the key. Correct. So even in the previous case also, the value has to map and not the key. Why did we write line number 78? So the question is, why did we write line number 78? That's very good question here. All right, so the reason why we wrote, and I don't think we need it. Let's get rid of it. I don't think we need that line anymore because it will automatically map from the value. So you are again right, Merrick, that we don't need this thing at all. We don't need it. I think this is also. Now, one thing I want to say is when you are using access level parameter, you see even the where class here, right? Where name, like this name, actual name class, right? The name field that is here, the field level security for name is also kind of respected here. Yes, that's the thing. Use query with bind always instead of query. Yep, that's what I did. Cool. So let's see. So now I think this should be fine and it should work fine. Let's do that. So let's go back to the dynamic sockle queries and say dynamic sockle dot, and then let's actually come back to um, resolve dynamic field sockle. We'll call this. So this method actually takes account. So I'm going to say account new account. Then we'll say account dot name equals test account. Then we can simply pass in the account because that's what this method is doing. Let's execute this. There it is. It seems to execute fine. It seems to compile and execute fine. All right. All right. Let's see. All right. So this is great. Um, we are now you are able to understand like query with binds, user mode data operations for Sockle. The next thing that I want to do here is actually take some examples and show you how to work with, the DML statements. Any questions so far? And Merrick, we appreciate you pointing me out some of the, uh, you know, the issues and also some of the code here. Any more questions here from anyone? Awesome. So let's actually move on to the DML recipes. Now, this is where I wanted to show you how simplified this feature actually uh, makes writing, code, Apex code now using user mode data operations. So what I'm showing you now is actually a simple class that I built to show you, and it's an example that I took from DML recipes. So in this example, right, what I'm trying to show you is, we are using this can the user dot create account. So can the user here is an Apex class actually that was created by one of my colleague. It's kind of a reusable class to do the uh, you know do the access level checks, for example field level security. So this class is first of all written with sharing. That means it is respecting the sharing permissions, right? uh, and but it has to check before insert happens. It has to check if the running user has access to this account object or not. Okay, so for that he's written this can the user, and there is this thing called create method here. So if I go actually look at the create method, so you see what he's trying to do is doing an object dot get s object type dot get describe, and he's using the object describe method to see if this is creatable or not. um, just shout out if you have code like this where you say get describe is creatable or accessible, or you have utility methods in your product where you're using that to enforce security. Shout out in the chat. But really that's what we are doing here, right? And then we are inserting, right? So how do we make sure to, so this is a big bulky library, right? And this is a lot of coding that I want to get rid of, right? Because natively now we support all of these. There's like platform cache that's being used to cache all this heavy metadata, right? So what you can do for this is you can actually get rid of this. We can actually get rid of this if statement. We don't need it. Don't need this, right? However, we're not doing just this. So anyways, so this is like a PMD exception or something. I'm gonna just comment it out for the time being. But as I said, there is this new thing in the town called as user. So you can say as user, I want to insert this as a user. Now I don't need to, you know, I reduce the dependency on this class now, can the user, which kind of had like, some more class dependencies like platform cache and permission cache, a lot of other things, right? So as you can see, what I've done now is I've kind of reduced the dependencies. Let's see. Okay, yeah, this is the method that I was showing you. So now I can say insert as user, right? Insert as user. So I can get rid of the dependencies, and let's actually try to save this. Actually, deploy this. The deploys are taking a lot of time through VS Code. Anybody else experiencing that? Next time I'm going to run through the CLI. Maybe this is a problem that we need to report to the team. I mean, it's just a simple class push, and it shouldn't be taking this much of time actually. Yes, VS Code is slow. Somebody just nodded that. The other way we could probably I could have done this is let's see. No, this is taking forever. It's just a simple class push. Come on, it should be real quick. There you go. Finally, it did it. Well, I mean, we could always open our command line and say sf for not for sf org. I think it's called deploy start, and that should have pushed it much faster, I guess. It's called project deploy. Yes, it's called project deploy. Now I don't have the changes, so it did say. But next time I'm going to use that. Okay, so I've raised this issue and told that it doesn't have to do with in general. This connected to your org. Merrick, I don't kind of agree with that actually, Merrick, but I think it's a problem that needs to be sorted. So it's not just with the org that's connected. So for example, so let's actually do one more example here, and this time I want this method to be a little more flexible. That means I want this method to sort of insert account, but I can also configure my access level. So I'm going to go ahead and say system.accessLevel here, system.accessLevel, and say access level. I can pass in the access level here, and then what I need to do is I'm going to use database.insert all or nothing. That is fine. I'm going to get rid of this dependency here. This one is gone. We don't need that. Can the user? We don't need the can the user. We're just going to make use of this database dot insert, right? Insert all or nothing, and then with access levels. So this one. So here I can put my S object list. So this is actually doing this in bulk actually. So all or nothing, it's there here. And then access level. So the access level could be access level here is coming from here, right? So that's fine. Yeah, so now, right, we have inserted accounts via the database method here. So in this method, I'm using database.insert, and accounts is what I'm passing, all or nothing, and access level. Now this method is more what I would say, it's more configurable, right? Because I can pass in the access levels, right? I can execute as system, I can execute as as user mode as well. All right, so now what I'm gonna do here is, now this time I'm gonna push it from the CLI and see if it's faster. So I'm gonna do sf deploy start. Oh, it's called sf project deploy start. So you see it's pushing fast. There you go. You see, that was really quick, right? So yeah, it's definitely a bug in the VS Code extensions product. I'll let the product team know, so you can see. Just remember this command. It's called sf project org deploy. I think that's what it's called. Start. I think that's what it's called. It's called sf project deploy start. Okay. Okay. It's called sf project deploy start. Let me type a couple of times so I get used to it. So it's called SF project deploy start. So as you can see, there's no changes at this point. So it did not kind of detect anything, but it's fast. This is what we explored, Merrick, with you, right? So again, yeah. So I want to basically say this, right? It's awesome. Yes, it's awesome to find out that the CLI is way faster and actually takes a lot of time in the VS Code. So remember this command actually. So if you're working with ScratchOx, right? SF project deploy start. That's the thing that you need, and the same command actually also works in with the sandboxes too. So SF project deploy start, right? Um, all right, so again, as you can see, we got rid of the scan the user dependencies in this class. Let me bring that class DML recipes. So how about we just do a quick test? Let's do a quick test of this class just to make sure that things are working as expected. So what I'm gonna do here is just call DML recipes. It's a static method too. Let's say static method 2. And surprisingly, what this is doing is actually inserting one of the accounts as empty so that we can throw this exception, I guess. This is more of a negative scenario that I think somebody wanted to show. I'm going to do some, I don't want it to be failing, so I'm going to just put this thing there here. Just say name equals name2. There you go. So now again, let's deploy that now using that command that I showed you. Magic deploy and see how fast it is. There you go. Boom, done. So great. And then what we can do here is let's test it out. That's what we are trying to do here, right? Let's test it out. So I'm gonna come here and then say name as, let's put it as one of the account will be Salesforce CLI. The account will be VS Code. VS Code Salesforce extension. Right. So let's actually execute this. Method does not exist. Does not exist or incorrect signature. Of course, because why? Because it needs all or nothing. All or nothing in this case, let's make it as true. And then so all or nothing means if I say true, that means if one of the account fails, everything will fail and roll back, right? If I change this parameter to false, that means if one of the accounts is also not inserting and the other account is successful, it still goes and inserts one of the account and throws an error for the other one. Okay, so that's what all or nothing means. All or nothing, if it's true, that means either everything or nothing. If it is false, that means there is a partial save behavior configured. Siddharth Pradhan is saying, me too, facing a lot of time in VS Code deployment. For the time being, I showed you a workaround, Siddharth Pradhan, right? I showed you a workaround, actually, how you can get past that. All right, so next thing we want to do is give the access level. So access level for this is user mode, right? So we're going to say access level dot user mode, and now execute. It seems to do 1 DML, right? Why 1 DML and not 2? Although we are inserting 2 rows here, because we have bulkified it, right? We are inserting as a list. So that's why. So as you can see, there are 2 DML rows, but 1 DML statement. So if I actually go to my org, I should be able to see those new accounts. Let's do all view. Let's view all view, save. We can see the Salesforce CLI and the test account got, sorry, the VS Code SF extension got inserted right now. So this is working fine and also working in the user mode because we said AccessLevel as user mode. Now remember that, if you actually go to the Apex Recipes sample app, right? So for example, what I would recommend you to do is um, go to Apex Recipes sample app. So for example, I want to blow this one and show you Apex Recipes sample app. There, if you actually go to our data collection recipes here, like for example, if you actually go to main default and go and look at all our classes and look for data recipes, you'll see a lot of recipes like this in our DML recipes that I've written to make sure you know how to work with these new keywords. The other thing that I highly recommend looking at it is if you are now doing any operation in system mode, use as system. So it is more clear, that you want to do this in system mode. Okay. All right. All right. And, there are examples for everything like insert, upsert, uh, the update, right? Update statements, delete statements, all of them. And also like exception handling, like how do you want to exception handle these cases. Now, if there is a security exception, there is a different type of exception called security exception type. This is because this is a DML exception example, but if a security fail happens, this exception will be security exception. So you should handle that if you are doing an ISV app, security exception, Apex. So if you look at all the built-in classes, we have added a new thing called security exception here. You see security exception. Although it says that it works with crypto utility, but I can assure that it also works with our user mode data operations. I'll get fixed in the docs to be more precise and more clearer. Okay. All right, let me get back to my camera mode. Switch on my camera here. All right. So, again, I want to take some time and thank you. There are some questions I want to take it up. There are 2 minutes. So let's take this one question from Merrick. Actually, so I have a question. If we use upsert as system, what will the standard created by field show? Will it show the name of the running user or another user? If you use upsert as system, it's gonna show the user's name, right? It's not going to show that it's modified by a system user, although the operation happened in system mode, but still it's going to show that the user who executed the operation. It's always the user who executed the operation, but there might be an internal process that kind of executes this in system mode, but still we stamp the user who did the operation from the from the UI. I hope that clarifies for you, Merrick. um, yeah uh, Yeah, so we are almost, to our end of the stream. Just chat it out there. Give a shout out on Twitter or LinkedIn if you like this session. If you think this session is like these type of hands-on session are gonna help, let us know. And we have lots of code live sessions actually scheduled, which you can look it on our live page. I also wanted to share a interesting blog post here for you. Let me see if I can get the QR code really quick for that. So this blog post actually I wrote it where you can find more. So here's the QR code for that right on your screens at this point. So here I have actually explained in depth. I can quickly pull up that blog post if I have that. Maybe I don't, but yeah, really, in this blog post, right, I kind of show you a different um, ways of enforcing the security and talk about some of these features as well. So give it a read. Let us know what do you think about this blog and all of our content. All right, so with that, right, let me wind up the today's session. And again, thank you so much for being here with us, and I hope to see you in the next one. Thank you so much.